accessory. Nosegays, tussy-mussies, they were something that an individual could use. I have one here. This is a rather fancy one. Usually you just needed a piece of lace, and then you could tie the flowers together. This one actually is a metal handle. You know, not everybody bathed but once a week, so carrying around some flowers on your person or on your lapel would certainly also stop any sort of problems with your general odor as well. But then you could use them to communicate different things. The first book on florography was believed to be published in 1809 by Joseph Hammer Pugstall. It was called the Dictionnaire du Langage des Fleuris. It appears to be the first one. The big one didn't happen until a few years later, about 1819. There was a book that was published by a guy. His name was Louis Courtembert, but he used the pen name Madame Charlotte de la Tour. And his book came out in 1819, and it was pretty much the one that opened up the floodgates. By the 1880s, there were hundreds of publications about florography, and they had regional differences. So depending on where you lived, you might actually have different definitions for different plants. So if you wanted to communicate appropriately, you needed to make sure that the giver or the givee both had the same book, so that you could know the correct meanings of the plants. Now, there were a lot of things that carried into the presentation, so not just the arrangement. If you gave wilted flowers, then that might mean that you didn't really like them. Also, if they had asked you a question with flowers, you could answer by returning a bouquet. If you returned it with your right hand, then you meant yes. If you returned it with your left hand, then you meant no. Also, you could signal who the flower arrangement was referring to by the direction of the ribbon. So if the ribbon pointed to the right, then it was about the giver, and if it pointed to the left, then it was about the givee. So you could have different ribbons pointing in different directions and communicate a lot of different things, in addition to the flowers themselves having meaning. I found one really interesting book. It was actually Collier's Cyclopedia of Commercial and Social Information and Treasury of Useful and Entertaining Knowledge. The name of the book is pretty seriously cool. But this was published in 1882, and in it, the writer said, "Flowers have a language of their own, and it is this bright, particular language that we will teach our readers. How charmingly a young gentleman can speak to a young lady, and with what eloquent silence in this delightful language. How delicately she can respond, the beautiful little flowers telling her tale in perfumed words." I love that notion of perfumed words. Now I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my slideshow, because I'm going to show some different pictures of flowers and different things like that. And then afterwards, I will show you how to make a tussy-mussy, and then we'll try our knowledge and see if you can identify the meanings of several bouquets that I have created. So these are some of the books. The Illustrated Language of Flowers, it came out in 1880. Penhall's Guide to Florography is a little bit younger. And then The Language of Flowers was also published in the 1880s. This one with the purple background is actually a newer book. So there are still books out there, and you can get them on The Language of Flowers. Now, clearly flowers can signify romance more than anything else, and the epitome of this is the red rose. However, although this traditionally means I love you, if it's too dark a shade of red, it can imply shame. If it's too light, it can also be pink, which is the message that actually means that you wish to keep your love a secret. And so you have to be careful because you might not get the desired effect if you don't get the right color of rose. A much simpler way of suggesting romance is mistletoe, which of course always means a kiss, though it is by no means its limit to the recipient. Japonica flower, which is actually a stilbe. A stilbe is a very concise way of sending a message of sincere love. Whereas if you wanted to send a red or a pink hyacinth, then that is less certain love, more of a playful love, more like a flirtation. Victorians were very explicit about some of the no strings fun that they like to have. And so they might opt for dill in a bouquet, which means pure lust. So if you liked chrysanthemums, then they could offer love if you sent a red one, truth if you sent a white one. And if you mix the two colors together, then you got the hybrid message of true love. If a person was sure of true love, then they might opt for something a little more risque and urgent, like spider flower. If you included a spider flower, that actually was a request to elope. So let's go and get married right now. We can't wait anymore. If you're a little less dramatic or a little less sure of yourself, then you might try just a warm sentiment by including spearmint. It's a nice middle ground for someone. A nice middle ground for someone who's not sure if they want to communicate full love or whether they're just still flirting, is to send a pansy. Pansies translate to "you occupy my thoughts." So there's someone that you think about often. Now, sometimes when we're using flowers, they could actually communicate entire sentences, and if combined, might even be able to create entire paragraphs. So something much longer than "I love you" or "I like you," but rather chives is oftentimes represents usefulness. But if you just sent a bouquet of chive flowers, then you were asking someone why they were upset or why they were concerned or even why they were mourning, because it communicates, why are you weeping? Rosemary is for remembrance. It's used two different ways. One, it's used to help you to signify the memory of a person who you've lost, and you're trying to remember them and keeping them in your remembrances. But it can also be used as a way of saying, this day is significant and I wish to remember it. And so it's a very popular ingredient in floral bouquets for new brides, because of course your wedding day is certainly a day that you want to remember. Of course, then we have pansies. They're very cheerful. They look like a face. They're a tough flower because they do withstand frost in the spring. And so they can represent resourcefulness and thoughtfulness and someone who's undeniably charming. So you can compliment someone by sending them pansies. Now, gladiolas, because of their tall, very upright shape, they kind of dominate the room when they're put into an arrangement. And they can grow up to 5 feet tall. So when you're giving gladiolas, you're making a serious statement. And they generally symbolize honor or strength. So when you're trying to compliment someone, gladiolas are a good thing. They were also a flower considered appropriate to send to a man from a woman. Rhododendron might be something that you would send to suggest to a suitor or a situation that's not to be trusted. So you might send rhododendron to someone that you wanted to communicate that you didn't think the guy they were with was really that great. Now, daffodils, another plant that's out right now, can give you an ability to send an uplifting message, like you're the only one, or the sun is always shining when I'm with you. But when you combine it with other flowers, then you can also change that meaning And so then it can move to a certain amount of uncertainty, or it can be used as a sign of respect, sometimes to symbolize unrequited love. So you might send them to someone who doesn't love you back. Or sometimes you can use it as a symbol for new beginnings. Now, marigolds, now these are actually scented marigolds that I put in this picture. So they have a slightly more delicate flower than your traditional puffball marigolds. However, either one can be used for the symbolism. The key with marigolds is they help you to share a wealth of emotions and thoughts, specifically when you're sharing grief or pain, or if you have a desire for riches, wealth, or they can even be used to express jealousy over someone else's wealth. And of course, if you can say nice things with flowers, you can do insults with flowers as well. And Victorians use these especially because any outward signs of anger or hatred or those types of emotions were definitely taboo. So there are a whole lot of options for sending cuts to someone using an insulting flower arrangement. If you want to show indifference, you can send candy tufts. Candy tufts say that you just don't really care one way or the other. But if you want to imply that they stink, or that they're really outside the purview of what you want to consider at all, then you would send them garlic. It can infer that they are evil, or that they're an evil force, or they are something that needs to be warded off, because garlic is oftentimes used to ward off evil. Some dictionaries did contradict each other. So hydrangeas were sometimes used to mean heartlessness and frigidity, but they could also be used for gratitude and apology. So when you were sending hydrangeas, you did have to be careful that you were working with the same dictionary as the person you were sending it to, or you might lose the meaning in translation. Nothing could be clearer, however, about anger or hatred for someone than an orange lily. It's pure and simple hatred. No ands, ifs, or buts. It could be spiced up with a yellow lily, which would give it some positive meanings such as gratitude or jubilation, but mixed with the orange, the message is that you are false. So there's falseness in you, and you're not to be trusted. In certain cases, if somebody wants to deride someone's lack of luck with the opposite sex, then they might send amaranthus. It's also known as love lies bleeding. It represents desertion. So it can be used to say, love seems to always desert you, or your love is deserting you and you can say goodbye with it. Now, if you wanted to insult someone by saying they were crazy or stupid, then you would just send them nuts. Walnuts, hazelnuts, very popular for doing that. Another contradictory herb is basil. Basil can mean love or hatred. So then you kind of have to decide, what are they combining it with? So in the background here, I have marigolds with my basil. So that would mean that it was a good positive spin. Whereas if I put it with yarrow, then the negative thought is the most important. So the yarrow would change the meaning from love to hatred. Yarrow is used to symbolize a sympathy for heartache, but if you're using it in a negative connotation, then you're actually mocking them, and so you can turn positive plants into a negative insult. Peony is another big one. Beautiful flower, gorgeous tall stems. However, they use them totally to communicate anger. There's nothing more exciting than a passive-aggressive flower. So if you wanted to communicate friendship, then you can start with a number of different flowers. This is Belle of Ireland. This might communicate whether you think someone should be wishing someone good luck. Bluebells can be used for gratitude. So if you're sending those to someone, then you are wishing them thank you or something, gratitude for something they've done for you. You can also send cattails, and cattails would wish them peace and prosperity. And then we have euphorbia. Euphorbia is used to signify endurance and persistence. Kind of a platonic love kind of thing. And then you could add to that by including woodbine. But if you wanted to be more emotional, then you might send sage. Sage shows respect for wisdom and knowledge. And then if you have fond memories, then you can use periwinkle. And then you can mix it with myrtle, and that would heighten the communication of how much you find them someone you want to remember always. Now, symbolism in flowers has been used for ages as well. This is a Tudor rose. Tudor roses was a combination of the white rose and the red rose that was put together by, oops, now I forgot, Henry VII, to signify the end of the War of the Roses. So you'll see the graphic representation, but there is also white and red roses out there. Now, hibiscus is the symbol of Hawaii. It's their national plant. And borage is a symbol for strength and courage. And the Cancer Research Institute of the UK actually uses borage as their emblem, which is kind of appropriate because it does take strength and courage to fight cancer. Now, if you provide somebody with lily of the valley, then you're saying you've made my life complete. They can also symbolize sweetness, returning of happiness, trust, humility. They also have a slightly religious connotation because they are said to symbolize the tears of the Virgin Mary. That, coupled with the passion flower, which is also considered to be a symbolization of the Passion of Christ, and those wavy petals that you see are actually seen to be the holy crown of Jesus. So those two plants can be used for interesting symbolism for religious purposes. And then if you give someone a green rose, you could be saying they're an alien, or you could just be saying men are from Mars. I don't know. Now, like I said, there are books. This is one of the most common books. This is actually The Language of Flowers by Kate Greenwald. And hers was one of the most prolifically published books on the language of flowers. There was also this really cool Wreath of Conversation game that came out when Victoria and Albert announced their engagement. And so you played with it, and there were different flowers, and they connotated different questions, and you could use them as a conversation starters as a parlor game. Now, when you're making a tussy-mussy, when you're giving a bouquet to someone, then you want to do several things. One, you want to choose a focal flower, and then you need to get certain materials. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I can actually show you these things. All right, so first you need just a paper doily. You need to cut a hole in the middle of it. So you just kind of bend it in half. Take your scissors and cut one way, then bend it in half the other way, cut another clip in it. Now you've got the X hole in the middle that you can poke these flowers into. Then you need a focal flower. So for this one, I got a pansy. But to go with my pansy, I have some basil. This is purple basil. I'm going to strip the leaves off the bottom of it. And then I have a petunia. It's a rather lovely petunia there. Has anybody figured out what my theme is for this particular bouquet? And then I also have some, this is lemon verbena. And lemon verbena is going to be my filler. So I'm going to put lemon verbena, several sprigs of lemon verbena around the plant, around the plants. Lemon verbena signifies strengthening. So what I'm doing by adding lemon verbena around the entire thing is that I'm strengthening the meaning of this particular. And then some yarrow to make sure there's no confusion about the negative connotation of my bouquet. Now you're going to take the plants and you're going to trim them all up so they're the same length. Then you're going to poke them through the lace so that it's up around the flowers. Then if you want this to last for a while, you want to take a damp piece of paper towel and wrap it around the bottom of the stems. And then you can cover it with a piece of aluminum foil, or you can cover it with floral tape. I like to use floral tape. It's easy to use. It just wraps around. You just stretch it and it becomes sticky. And so it holds everything together nicely. It makes a nice handle to hold on to. You can also hold everything together with a rubber band, or you can use floral wire. And there you have it, a nice little tussy-mussy. And for those of you who haven't figured out what it means I don't like you. Don't take it personally. It just happened to be the flowers I had in the yard today. Now, if you're giving a tussy-mussy these days, you probably have to communicate with it, telling the recipient what it means. So what I recommend is that you take a nice little tag, write the meaning of the flowers on the tag, and then attach it to the stem, because not everybody's going to have a language of flowers dictionary in their bookshelf. So they're going to need some assistance in getting things, in understanding what you're trying to say. So that being said, I have about 7 bouquets that I made, arrangements that I made, and I want you to try and figure out what they mean. So I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to look at some bouquets that communicate. So you can communicate love, you can communicate support, or you can communicate distrust. So here's the first one. It's got some ivy. It's got some purple zinnias, some yellow and red roses, and baby's breath. Anybody have a guess what that might mean?
So if you have any guesses, you can go ahead and put those in the chat box, or if you raise your hand, I'd be happy to unmute you so that you can share what you think it might mean as well.
With this one, you've got the ivy for affection, the purple zinnias for lasting affection, the yellow and the red roses for excitement, and then the baby's breath for festivity. So what do you think?
So we've got one person that said love, and I just unmuted Bobby so that she can comment.
I don't know how to do it.
We're learning.
No, I don't know how to unmute because I'm not on that screen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I guess I did do it. How about Mother's Day?
That one would work for Mother's Day. It also works for an anniversary, any sort of lasting love. So you are absolutely correct.
All right.
I got something right today.
All right, here's another one. Now this one has red roses, and these are fully bloomed red roses, so they're fully open. And then there's ranunculus, and carnations, both pink and white.
All right, again, if you have a guess, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you if you'd like, or feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat box.
I know if you're looking at the spreadsheet, you kind of have to scroll around.
So we had a guess of friendship.
The red roses in this case are for gratitude. The ranunculus is for radiance. And the pink carnations mean I'll never forget you. And the white ones are innocence. So appreciation or friendship or appreciation of a friendship, those would all work. So you're absolutely correct.
Excellent. Good job, guys.
Now this is another basket one. Nice one to leave on the front porch. It's got daffodils, yellow roses, pansies, yellow daisies, and petunias.
Welcome.
That would certainly work.
Welcome.
Or just simply saying, I like you. But I like you or welcome to the neighborhood would certainly fall in together, especially with the notion of the daffodils as a new beginning. So that's very good.
Yeah, we had another person comment, cheery hello, so that works as well.
Yes. So you guys got the hang of this. That's exciting. All right, this one has dark pink roses, white roses, baby's breath, and then it's hard to see in this picture, but there is rosemary sprigs in here as well.
We've got sympathy or hidden love.
Yeah, this one, the idea was definitely sympathy. In this case, because of the baby's breath, probably mourning or sympathy for the death of a younger person rather than an older person. Now this one is the one that I held up earlier in the metal handle. This one has pink roses, white dahlias, baby's breath, pink peonies, and hydrangeas. Although because most of them are white, they're hard to tell apart.
Engagement or springtime?
This one is really about being shy and being too shy to express yourself personally, that you desire somebody or you really want to make it work with them. You think they're wonderful and you would really like to date them, but you're too shy to actually ask. So that one was a little tricky.
It is a sneaky one. We also have a comment that we love the silver handle on this bouquet.
Oh, that was actually something that a friend of mine gave me when I was in her wedding party, and we got to carry the bouquet, flowers as the bridesmaids in it, and then I got to keep it afterwards so I can make bouquets in it often. Now this one is daisies and baby's breath. So very quick, very simple, very easy to give to someone on what kind of an occasion.
The comment we've got for this one is that's springtime for sure.
Definitely springtime. And another thing that always happens that we like in springtime is new babies. And so you could send this as welcome spring or congratulations on the new baby. So you guys are getting it. All right. This one is peonies, eucalyptus, angelica, and lemongrass. This one was trickier.
This is a tricky one. We don't have any guesses yet. Perhaps loyalty or faithfulness?
Well, actually, I was going for a very special wishing you prosperity, inspiration, and protection as
Okay.
we all make our fresh start after the virus.
Lovely.
Lemongrass I used as a symbol of a fresh start. And of course, I end with some tulips because you've been a beautiful audience.
Does anybody have any questions? I can, again, if you raise your hand, I'm happy to unmute you, or you can type them in the box, on the chat box, or I've got a Q&A box as well.
I think Bobby raised your hand.
Oh, yes. Unmuting Bobby. Go ahead, Bobby.
Okay. Hi, Marcy. It's been a long time, but you've been at the library a lot the past few years, and I always enjoy your shows, and you present very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, if anybody has any questions about any herbs that I might have talked about, or any of the flowers that I talked about, or how to grow them or use them other than in the language of flowers, don't be afraid to ask that as well, because I have a lot of that information stored in my head as well. Yeah, that's a whole program in and of itself, teaching flowering.
So the comment for those on YouTube that cannot see our comment list, the comment was, loved all the arrangements and would love to know how to create flower arrangements.
The key with creating a good flower arrangement is always to choose a focal plant. So like this one, when you're looking, your eye is drawn to the middle where the yellow rose is, and then you come out and go around to the darker one. Now this is your typical type of basket arrangement, but you can design flower arrangements that are asymmetrical, where they're taller on one side and then go off to the other side. You can also do flower arrangements where they're pyramid shaped, so everything comes from the middle and comes down, or you can do them fan shaped, where everything fans out from a center point. But the key for any flower arrangement is always to have that focal spot in the middle, so that you're telling the viewer where you want them to start, so that they look at your arrangement.
All right. They said, thanks, kind of like painting.
Yes, it is kind of like painting.
Yeah, there's definitely an art to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have no other comments or questions. Thank you all for joining us this evening. As always, please keep an eye on our calendar. We are posting stuff frequently. Upcoming on Thursday, May 14th at 1:30 p.m. we'll be having Little Fashionista on the Prairie, where we'll be addressing, Laura Keyes will be presenting on fashion in the Little House on the Prairie novels by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And then we had a thank you for bringing a little spring and sunshine to us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, it's nice to bring the outdoors inside when we're all stuck inside for a bit.
Yes, as we're all sheltering in place.
Yeah, so please keep an eye on our calendar, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you all very much.
Great, take care, everybody.